Midday tomorrow marks the close of nominations for the presidency. The election to replace Michael D. Higgins takes place next month. At the moment, there are three candidates: Fine Gael's Heather Humphreys, Fianna Fáil's Jim Gavin and Independent TD Catherine Connolly, who is supported by the left political parties in the Oireachtas, including Sinn Féin. She launched her campaign in Dublin last night and she's with us this morning. You're very welcome. Good morning to you. You refused to take journalist questions at the end of your launch last night, unlike Heather Humphreys when she launched her campaign. Why?
Actually, I've had 3 launches and I've never refused to take a question. So I faced the journalists on the day I launched in July and answered every question. I repeated that at the Ploughing Championships. I repeated that up in Belfast, and I repeated it again outside the Dáil when the broadcasters were protesting.
So why not last night?
So I will explain that. So last night was the launch of the parties that were supporting me. 350 people attended. It was an absolute marvellous experience, and all of the parties on the left have come in behind me. It was a celebration. The media had been invited, and absolutely it was made clear that it wasn't a question and answers basis last night, and they came on that understanding.
They tried to ask you questions but you wouldn't answer.
No, that's not accurate, and you've asked me. We had 350 people attend. It was a celebration. It was momentous. And the media that were there on the understanding that they would see what was happening. There wasn't any room for questions and answers. And I have made myself available, as I have this morning, and as I have since July, for every single question. Actually, I don't think any other candidate has made themselves available. And just on that, I've also made myself available in 4 independent forums with independent chairs: Dundalk, Drogheda, Sligo and Carrick-on-Shannon.
Well, look, you're here now, so we have an opportunity to ask you questions over the next number of minutes. You did speak to BBC Radio Ulster yesterday when you were asked about the British Prime Minister's comments that Hamas should have no role in the future of a Palestinian state. You said it was up to the people of Palestine to make that decision. You also said that Hamas is part of the fabric of the Palestinian people. Would you have said that the IRA was part of the fabric of the Catholic people in the north?
First of all, I think we want to acknowledge that genocide is going on in Palestine, and we want to acknowledge the deaths that we know about, almost 70,000 people. And I'm looking at you and I said, let's acknowledge what's happening. And the most important thing is to say it's genocide and to stop it. That's the first thing. And so we have various countries recognising Palestine now, which is positive, but belated, while the genocide unfolds under our eyes. So my voice is saying, please stop the genocide. Every country has a right to self-determine what they do, what type of government they have.
I want to talk to you about your views on Hamas, though, in specifically. And I asked you, because of that comment yesterday to BBC Radio Ulster, based in Belfast, broadcasting across the north, would you have said that the IRA was part of the fabric of the Catholic people of the north?
Well, let me just say first, Hamas, I have utterly condemned over and over. I've never been equivocal about it in their attack on the 7th of October. I was asked on that radio show yesterday, was that genocide? That was the level of questioning. Was that attack genocide?
On the October 7th?
On the October 7th.
But I'm asking you this morning why you would say Hamas is part of the fabric of the Palestinian people.
I'll try and answer that for you as best I can. They were elected by the people the last time there was an election. Overwhelming support for them back in 2006 or 7. And they are part of the civil society of Palestine. We are reliant on them for figures in relation to the deaths.
Do you regard them as a terrorist organisation?
They are prescribed as a terrorist organisation.
Do you accept that? Do you agree with that designation?
That's the designation. Israel is acting as a terrorist state. Both have to sit down at some stage. I mean, let's look at what Israel are doing and call it out for what it is. They're absolutely out of control.
But we're talking specifically, Catherine Connolly, about Hamas. We do talk a lot about Israel and what is happening there. I do want to focus on Hamas with you this morning because of your comments yesterday. Do you agree that what they did on October the 7th
absolutely
were war crimes?
What they did was absolutely unacceptable. Both sides have committed war crimes, and hopefully both sides will be held to account. But history did not start on the 7th of October, and at some stage parties outside of Palestine and Israel must begin to look at what has led to this conflict and how it can be resolved. And resolved it must. In the meantime, the slaughter is going on and the genocide is going on. And I've travelled the country, I'll be travelling it again, and it's the top of the list for everyone that I'm talking to. Of course, all the other issues, housing and health, but the ongoing genocide, people are appealing to us, please stop it. The 80-something% of the people that have died or have received injuries are civilians.
But when you talk about them being part of the fabric of the Palestinian people, in May of this year, Amnesty reported that Hamas security forces were threatening, harassing, intimidating Palestinians who were protesting against them in Gaza, committing a serious violation, Amnesty said, of the rights to freedom of expression. Do you think they're the protectors of the Palestinian people?
I absolutely respect Amnesty International, and indeed they produced a report in relation to Israel that we never even discussed in the Dáil. And I respect all the reports and I do my best to read them.
We're talking about Hamas and the Palestinian people.
We're talking about...
Do you regard them as the protectors of the Palestinian people at the moment?
I abhor violence on any side. As a mother, as a female, I abhor violence, and I will use my voice to promote peace in the world and peaceful solutions.
So you wouldn't want to see them in government in any future Palestine, would you?
You see, if we could for a little, history did not start on the 7th of October. There's a history behind this and a history of the aggression of Israel in relation to the Palestinian people. As we speak today, we hear Trump talking about annexing more territory. We heard what he said he was going to turn the Gaza Strip into. So it's very important that we give perspective. It's very important that we learn from our own troubles and our own history.
Well, on that question then, if they are to be given an opportunity to govern in Gaza again, wider than that perhaps, would they have to disarm? Would they have to disavow their mission of destroying the state of Israel?
Both sides have to disarm. We know that from the conflict in Northern Ireland. We know that from Colombia. We know that from all countries.
Hamas specifically.
Obviously, we cannot have a peaceful resolution without disarmament.
And disavow its mission of destroying the state of Israel.
I think they have changed that, but absolutely.
They haven't. They are still committed to eradicating the state of Israel.
Just go back for a moment and let's look at what Netanyahu did in relation to Hamas when it suited his purposes. And he's on record for funding them millions in relation to, because it served his purpose to divide and conquer. So let's look at this in a broader perspective as someone who's absolutely committed to a peaceful resolution.
But in terms of Hamas, since they took over Gaza when they did, they, according to various human rights organisations, they have used excessive force in response to several protest movements, regularly detaining and torturing dissidents. They believe through a Sharia court of law that women must have the permission of a male guardian to travel. They imposed an Islamic dress code on women lawyers and high school female students. Is that the future you want for the women of Palestine?
The future I want for Palestine is for Palestinians to make that decision. They have a right to self-determination. They have a right to decide what type of government they want. There are lots of governments that I don't agree with. There are lots of countries that I don't agree with in the way they treat women or men. But each country has a right to decide themselves.
Let's move on and talk about the North, because you have the backing of Sinn Féin now, and they believe that Irish unity, they've said it now on a number of occasions since announcing their backing for you, that Irish unity will be at the centre of your presidency. Now, we've been doing a little bit of digging. The last question that you asked on the North in the Dáil was over 8 years ago, and it concerned Brexit. And to misquote Pádraig Flynn from a previous infamous interview during a presidential campaign, do you have a newfound interest in the constitutional question thanks to Sinn Féin?
Thank you for that question, and thank you for quoting Pádraig Flynn. He's an inspirational man. I have repeatedly gone up to Northern Ireland. It's something I didn't announce. I went up repeatedly in different capacities. I went up as chair of the Irish Committee. I went up in my own personal capacity. I've met groups on both sides of the divide. I would like to say diverse communities. And so I've no newfound interest in Northern Ireland. It's always been there. Always. When I went up lately, I went to the Women's Centre in Shankill. I met with them. Previously, I met with Linda Irvine as chair of the Irish Committee, and I also met her in a separate capacity on a personal level. So I have repeatedly gone up to Northern Ireland. On a personal level, I've done a marathon in Belfast. I've taken part in an intervarsity. So on many, many levels, I have an interest in Northern Ireland.
Very good. So when you talk about Irish unity, do you mean the North leaving the UK to become part of a single unitary Irish Republic?
We have a constitution, and Article 3 says it is the firm will of the Irish people by consent to have a united Ireland, when by consent and when everybody agrees. And I'm very aware of the Constitution and what it sets out. And I will use my voice for that article to articulate that.
But what's your vision of that united Ireland? Is it that the North leaves the UK and becomes part of this single unitary state?
That is a political decision by the various governments, and they will have to come to some arrangement in relation to that with an open discussion and debate on it. As President, my role would be to articulate the Article 3. I couldn't set it out any clearly.
Well, let's talk about that and the extension of that article. How would you give substance to the guaranteed dimension of Britishness under the Good Friday Agreement, which talks about parity of esteem for the values, the ethos and the aspirations of both communities in the North?
I think it's very important that we do that.
But how do you do it is the question.
Well, I will certainly have an open oris for people to come up. I will certainly be inviting people up. I would look forward to going to Northern Ireland myself in my role as President. But we've had a Good Friday Agreement that came on the backs of horrific deaths and loss.
But just to be clear, Catherine Connolly, I mean, I've asked you how you would give substance to the guaranteed dimension of Britishness, and you're telling me you would invite unionists to the Áras.
I'm saying it's a political decision. It's obviously, it has to be all the governments involved, and I'm very conscious of not crossing the boundary when it comes. I'm
not asking you to cross the boundary. I'm asking you as a presidential candidate how you would, what's your vision for that guaranteed dimension of Britishness?
Well, we've already put the structures in place, cross-border structures. For 4.5 years as Lascian Corla, I listened with great care to TDs raising all the issues on the cross-border structures, the Ulster Canal and all the other projects, Forest na Gaeilge. From the Good Friday Agreement onward, great work has been done by both sides in relation to bridging the divisions between communities.
So to be specific, would you support the idea of a confederal system, a parliament in Stormont, a parliament in Dublin, sharing sovereignty with all the laws and the institutions of government?
I have an open mind on that, actually. I have an open mind, and I look forward to the discussion and the debate that's going to ensue as a result of our Article 3 in the Constitution. But it has to be done with consent, it has to be done with respect.
But people will want to hear your views on your vision for a united Ireland. If Sinn Féin, who are, let's be honest, your primary backers now, given their size and their wealth, and they're saying that Irish unity is going to be at the centre of your presidency. Well, people need to know.
Let's just be clear about something. I stood as an independent candidate. I declared as an independent candidate. I'm very, very, I'm delighted that the parties have come in behind me, including Sinn Féin. They're coming in behind me because they see that I have characteristics that they wish to see in a president.
Okay.
Just let me for a moment, because it's very important. Yesterday was a momentous decision when all of the parties were there together, not because we agree on everything, not because we see everything the same way, but we're at a point in our history where we need a president that's not afraid, a president that will stand up with courage.
Yeah. I want to get back to the United Ireland, though, issue. If it requires a new constitution, and most people believe it would, who would draft that? Would you expect unionists to sit down and help draft a new constitution?
All parties were involved in the Good Friday Agreement, and civil society played a huge role in the Good Friday Agreement. Going forward, it would have to be that everybody is involved equally. Absolutely. Okay. We have to respect both every tradition and every community in the 6 counties.
Another major topic for you is NATO and EU policies in the whole area of defence. You're very critical of both. Do you blame Russia exclusively for the war in Ukraine?
What Russia has done is wrong. They invaded a sovereign, independent state. Absolutely wrong. As a neutral country, we have to use our voice over and over to stop the normalisation of war, use whatever diplomatic channels we can. Neutrality is not standing back, or the words that have been used in various articles, free riding on other countries. It is a proactive policy, and we have a duty actually to act under that policy to bring peaceful resolutions.
But do you believe in any way that NATO bears any responsibility for what took place in Ukraine 3.5 years ago?
I think NATO is actually going back. I remember looking at NATO and they had on talking about rogue states. I don't think that's a language we should be using. In relation to Russia, I think that diplomatic efforts could have been made much sooner to stop the war and the slaughter that's ongoing, and they haven't taken place.
That's what Donald Trump believes as well.
Well, it's funny sometimes who you end up with. When we go back to the referendums, and when I spoke about the 2 referendums on care and taking a mother out of the Constitution, I also had interesting colleagues on the same side.
Absolutely.
And that's what happens.
But I do want to ask you about NATO, and in the past few weeks, Russian aircraft have violated Polish, Romanian and Estonian territory. In the event of something more sustained in those countries from Russia, who would defend them if not NATO?
You see, if we just step back a little bit, Israel attacked Iran. No comment, no sanctions. Israel went into Qatar. So if we're going to call out Russia, which is absolutely right, then as a neutral country and a voice for peace, we must call out abuse of power in any country. So if we look, how could Israel go in and bomb Iran and get away with that, and go into Qatar and still be treated as the only democracy in the Middle East?
The government here is planning on removing the triple lock through legislation. If you're president, could you see yourself referring that legislation to the Council of State? You
see, it's speculative, and I have very strong opinions that I've never hidden on the triple lock. And actually, I agree with Micheál Martin when he said it's absolutely the core part of our neutrality, the triple lock. That's what he said, and I absolutely agree with him. As president, when you get legislation to sign, you must consider it carefully. And you have a role under the Constitution to say, does the legislation comply with the Constitution? If you have doubts about that, you have your experts and you take advice, and then you make your decision whether to refer it. If you do, and it's important for the listeners to understand, if you do refer it and to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court find it's constitutional, that's it. If you don't refer it, then it can be challenged. Okay. So they are the decisions that a president faces.
Just 2 final questions. How much funding are you getting from Sinn Féin for your campaign?
Well, let me just say in the first instance, we have 7,000 volunteers signed up. We have, from contributions alone, not from Sinn Féin, from contributions from individuals, something around 130,000. That is the measure and the strength of the movement on the ground. There are strict rules in relation to any party making contributions to my campaign. We will be closely watching those and complying.
How much funding have they pledged to you?
There have been no pledges from any party. Absolutely no pledges. We're working with them as partners in relation to what they can do, and clearly parties
But you need money to run your campaign, and Sinn Féin is a wealthy party, so how much are they funding you?
I'm really trying to answer as clearly as I can. There are rules around what parties can contribute to my campaign as an independent candidate. They can pay for materials, they can have people on the ground, and we're working all of that out.
Okay.
There are no promises, there are no arrangements, but we are working in partnership for the ideals and for the values that we all stand for, and for a different vision for this country.
And just finally, if you are elected, will you limit yourself to 1 term?
I would hope to only serve 1 term. It's hard enough to get in there. and I've been out since the end of July. I've been canvassing every day. I haven't really thought about that. I haven't really thought about it, but I can see myself doing 2 terms, and I will do my best to serve the people of Ireland. In fact, I'll be taking a solemn vow under Article 12.8, a solemn and public vow to serve the welfare of the people of Ireland. And I will do that as best I can.
Thank you very much indeed. Independent TD Catherine Connolly running for President for the Left in the Oireachtas. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.